wanna be by the fire, by the heat. Let it cover me. The cold gonna come like a liar, trying to blow through me, trying to make me weak.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to Tell You What, the podcast, where we talk with songwriters and musicians about songwriting and musician things. This is our first episode in a while. I decided to take a breather, spend some time listening to and learning from others while the world spun madly on these past few months. Today's guest, Joy Ike, is one of those artists we can listen to and maybe learn a bit from. Joy is a wonderful musician. Her music is infused with passion and energy. She talks in this episode about how she considers music a vocation, something she's compelled to do as a way to connect with people and spread the messages that her songs contain. Joy was a delight to talk with, so thoughtful, and her commitment to her chosen vocation is undeniable. Joy was also generous enough to share some of her thoughts on the current events shaking our country, the Black Lives Matter movement, the George Floyd killing. She's written an extensive blog post on these topics that some of you might want to read. You can find it at her website, joyike.com. On that site, you can also find info on Joy's artist coaching service, Cultivators, which she talks a bit about at the end of our episode. Be sure to check out Joy's music. Her last album, Bigger Than Your Box, is a great listen. And if we ever get out of this dang quarantine mess, check out her live show. I certainly look forward to doing that myself. So let's get to it. Here's our Tell You What discussion with Joy Ike. Okay, Joy Ike, welcome to Tell You What, the podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. You are in what is now your home city of Philadelphia. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, I've been in Philly for, I guess, going on 6 years now, but I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Right. And how's quarantine been treating you lately?
Oh, you know...
It's a loaded question.
I know. All right. I feel like that's, I always, I stop after 3 words. It's like, you know what I mean. But
we can leave
I've had a relatively good quarantine experience, if I'm being honest. I'm a homebody. So when March and April, when March came around, I was like, yes, I don't have to go anywhere. And now I have permission. So, right. First 3 months or so were great, but I'm kind of hovering in and out of the restless phase where I'm antsy to go somewhere, antsy to travel somewhere, and really miss, especially right now, every year, my sister and a friend and I like to go to a different country just to get out and explore somewhere else. And so,
did you have a plan for this year that was dashed?
No, we didn't have a plan. We were very last minute people, so we probably wouldn't have figured that out until like last month. But to be honest, though, I was supposed to be in France last month for my first out-of-country tour, so my first international tour. So honestly, that might have been the trip of this year.
Right. That's a big disappointment.
Yeah, that was kind of a bummer. Yeah, I'm hoping that those dates will be rescheduled next year, but we'll see.
And how do you feel about not performing in general? How badly are you missing that?
I go back and forth with that. I typically don't mind having a month where my calendar's pretty sparse. So
Right.
if I'm doing a few shows in a month, that's great. If I have an off month where I'm not doing anything, that's wonderful too. In general, I don't mind not touring as rigorously as I was touring before, some 4 or 5 years ago, being on the road so much. So I don't necessarily miss that, but I do miss live shows. And I've had 2.
Performing live shows.
Yeah, just live shows in general, and just for, a live audience. And so I've had 2 of those in the past few weeks. And one was enjoyable. The other one was just weird. They were worried about a crowd forming, so they didn't want to promote it. So it just kind of felt like it was counterproductive.
Yeah. I found that the shows that I've been able to, a couple of them that I've attended with the audience so spread out, right, with the distancing, I find it really, it's hard to get that interactive feeling.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, let's travel back in time for a minute. Wouldn't that be nice if we could actually do that for real? Let's talk about your early music memories around your home, your community, any early influences in your life musically.
Sure. I grew up in a house where we listened to a lot of African spiritual music. My parents came here from Nigeria, probably going on 45 years ago now. So my earliest memories are listening to a lot of Nigerian praise music in the house. My parents, my mom brought my grandmother over to the States when we were kids to help raise us while she was in medical school at the time. And so I just remember that growing up, I felt like I was very much immersed in Nigerian culture.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird to think that now in some ways, because I feel so Americanized, and I was born and raised in the States, but I always felt very much like I was, when I came home from school, I was in a different country. Everything was just so other and so different than my school and out of home experience, and so that music, I think, and I couldn't even tell you who the artists were, but that music, I think, is very formative for me.
Okay.
In terms of the type of sounds that I've really come to love now in my adult years, and really in my playing and performing style, and the things that I kind of gravitate to in performing, and having a percussive playing and performance style.
Right.
But with that soundtrack being being the wallpaper to my upbringing, I also remember taking piano lessons all of my childhood. My first piano lesson must have been at age 5 or 6, and I played until high school, was it? And I I remember hating the piano, hating
all the
it.
way through.
Yeah, all the way through, and really, I never enjoyed it. But growing up, we really learned to play music and appreciate it for its discipline, and not really for its enjoyment. And so, playing the piano was never anything. It was never something that I wanted to do. Even now, it's not something that I necessarily enjoy doing, but it's kind of the necessary evil for me. I love singing, I love songwriting, and playing an instrument makes those other 2 things possible in my world.
So it's a tool.
Yeah, so it's really a tool, and I hate to say that, especially I think of all those amazing musicians out there who are so skilled and so talented at what they do. It's just never been a love or a passion for me. So I can go weeks upon weeks without even touching my piano, but it's very hard for me to go a day or 2 without journaling. So I've always considered myself more of a writer than a musician.
Were your parents musicians at all?
Not so much. My dad has always loved toying around on the piano and the guitar, but it's never been.
But you have a
never
sister
really.
who is a musician.
Yeah, my sister is. She's an amazing, talented pianist and an even more amazing and talented drummer. And so
Did she have the same relationship to the piano that you did?
no, in fact, when I stopped playing the piano, when my brothers stopped playing the piano, she was the only one that kept going. So she loved it. She just has a knack. She picks up instruments and she can figure it out, and so she's got that real special talent. And so for her, making music is a joy,
Yeah.
and playing music is a joy.
So you left the piano behind when you were in high school?
Yeah, I was actually in marching band. I played the clarinet, and I kind of gave my parents an excuse, and I said, well, I can focus on the clarinet if I'm not playing two instruments, and so they bought it.
And how did you find your way back?
Wow, I was in college, and I was very frustrated. I think I was this frustrated writer that just couldn't figure out what I wanted to say, and somehow I knew subconsciously maybe that if I made myself return to the piano, that I would be able to say things that were stuck.
Right.
So yeah, that's really kind of how I found my way back. I remember taking this intro to piano course in my senior year just to kind of relearn the basics. And my whole life we had the music books and reading notes and all that stuff, but it was almost like in one ear and out one ear. So as soon as I left the piano in 8th grade, it was like, good, I don't have to ever think about that again. And when I picked it back up, it was all like, it was brand new to me, absolutely
Right.
brand new. So, and for me, I knew, I was like, I want to write songs. So if I can just learn chords and figure out this whole 1-3-5 thing, I'll be okay. And that's how I started to relearn again.
And so were you singing all this time as well, or did that kind of come about as a way to express the songs you were then writing?
Yeah, singing has been part of my life since day one. I have these blurry, fuzzy, foggy memories of going to the nursing home near my house growing up with my dad and my sister, and my dad would take us every Saturday morning to sing to the people who live there, just as kind of a ministry.
Right.
And so singing was just always around, and even in youth group in my middle school and high school years, I was singing with other church kids, and it's always been there. And so I've always loved singing, but it took me a while to find my voice. I don't think I knew what I sounded like. I think I was singing what I thought I should sound like, singing how I thought I should sound like.
Right.
And it took a while, maybe 3 to 5 years of really figuring out not just how I wanted to sound, but what I wanted to say, and maybe marrying those two things together to figure out what my voice sounded like.
So when did you first start performing your own songs in public, let's say?
Right out of college. I graduated from college about 15 years ago, and so in some ways I kind of still consider myself a baby with making music. But I remember my first year out of college, I was just like, okay, Joy, you can do this. Give it a try. You have all the time in the world, and you have nothing holding you back now. And there was this one coffee shop on campus that I used to go to just to study. And I stopped in one day and I said, hey, would it be okay if I did a concert here? This was after graduating, but I don't know if they knew me, or if it was a familiar space, so it just made sense to start there.
Right.
And so that was my first show. My sister, we went to the same university, and so she was still on campus. She's a couple years younger than me, and so I went to Guitar Center and I bought her a djembe because I knew I was too nervous to play on my own, and she had always had a knack for drumming. So I said, hey, I got this show and I really don't want to do the show on my own. If I get you this drum, will you drum with me? And she said, yeah, and the rest is history.
That's great. Bribery started the whole thing.
Yeah, she still thinks it's her drum, but it's totally mine.
So you talked about writing as your outlet for that time before you went back to the piano. Were you writing poetry as well? Because a lot of your lyrics have kind of a poetic quality, so has poetry been another outlet for you?
You know what? It hasn't been, but in the past few weeks during this quarantine, I've really been asking myself, okay, what do I want to make next? And I keep the word spoken word album keeps coming to me, and so
Right.
I feel like I need to explore that or give it a chance and see what that looks like. But I love poetry. I love spoken word. I love performance poetry.
Yeah. You published the lyrics to your last album on your website, and just reading through those, I mean, they come across so well just as poetry. So I think you're onto something here.
Sometimes in live shows, I'll speak the words instead of singing them mid-song. And then there's this one specific song that I read the song out before I play it, because the words come pretty fast within the performance of the song. So, and I'm like, I don't want you guys to miss this. I want you to hear what the song is about. And so I end up just reciting it. So yeah, there's something about poetry that I think I want to explore.
Right, that's great. Can you talk a bit about your creative process in terms of songwriting? Are you sitting down with a pad and a pencil? Are you at the piano? Do you like allot certain time in your day for writing?
Yeah, it's a weird back and forth that in some ways it feels like I haven't found a concrete routine. In fact, I think it maybe goes through seasons. Like when I feel like something's marinating, maybe it's like an overarching theme of like the year or whatever. Then things are coming up at one time, and especially for my last album, Bigger Than Your Box, I kind of had this concept, and I had some songs written and some that had pieces and things like that. So that whole season and the year, as I was kind of pulling everything together for that project, I remember going to my piano every day and just kind of hunkering down and just being like, okay, I have to give birth to this. But whenever any song or piece of a song isn't really attached to a project, it's really kind of an inspiration. When inspiration hits, that's when I jump on my piano, or that's when I pull out the pad and jot down notes here and there. And so actually, this last month or so, I've been doing a lot of random jotting down about trauma, as it relates to so many things. But last fall, I got this idea of writing an album about trauma in family context, and how cycles are kind of repeated and reinvented and passed down, and I think it kind of like came off the tails of Bigger Than Your Box, where Bigger Than Your Box is all about breaking out of things that make you feel stuck and bound, things that you feel like have gotten the best of you. So it was very clear to me that this was like the next step. But then, with this year, and we're kind of experiencing this whole collective trauma, I feel like I'm seeing the layers of that. And so I've just been like jotting down these ideas for songs that have to do with trauma on different levels. And so right now, at least for this project, and I don't know when it will materialize, but I feel like I'm kind of collecting the pieces. And this might actually be the spoken word project, who knows, but I'm collecting the pieces, and then I'll be able to kind of sift through and figure out, okay, what are the different songs on this project about. Sometimes I have to make myself sit at a piano to make something, but I don't necessarily.
So you would sit there with no preconception of what you were going to do.
Yeah, I don't like to go to the piano just for fun. I like to be like, oh, that's a great idea. Let me go and see what that sounds like or what that looks like. That doesn't happen enough. And I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if right now I just need to make myself create, or if I need to just let it flow. Because in some ways, I feel like I could easily let myself get lazy if I don't just force myself to do it. And I'm not one of those people who likes to create just because I can. I like to create when there's something that's really kind of pushing me towards it.
Given the role you said that percussion plays in your music and in your background, you talked about that a bit earlier, and obviously it's evident in your most recent album. How does that entering your creative phase? Do you hear the beats? Like maybe you would start with a beat and that would become something? Are they prominent in the early stage of the creation, or is that those sounds kind of develop later?
Yeah, no, it's like sometimes I feel like drums are the thing that are driving the song.
Right.
And I tell people this all the time. Like, I hear drums even when there are no drums, and I'm playing drums even when there are no drums. It doesn't. I know that doesn't really make sense, but it's like they're always there for me. Whether it's me snapping mid-song, stomping my feet, which I'm always stomping in a live performance. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's how my body is swaying. Like, the rhythm is always there. And so
it's there from the early stages of the creation. You're hearing rhythm.
Yeah, and sometimes that's what determines how the song finds its way.
Yeah, that's interesting. You just did talk about performing live. You're kind of known for entertaining and engaging live performances. You already talked about a couple of ways that they might be different than some things other people might see. What do you think is important to a live show? What is it that you're trying to accomplish?
I've always felt this, even now more than ever, I feel like there's an urgency and a need to encourage people and just build them up. It's kind of this thread that has found itself in every one of my albums in some kind of way. When I first started making music, especially in the first 3 to 5 years, I kept trying to figure out why I was making it. Half the time it's because you created something and you want people to hear it, and that's really all it is. But that never kept me going. Like, that never really fueled what I was doing, because again, going back to this whole thing of not feeling comfortable as a musician, I was always like petrified of the stage, and it wasn't until about, I think, 2017, 3 years ago, when I finally got past that. And wow. It's crazy to me to think that it took that long, but I kept trying to figure out, okay, Joy, why are you still doing this when you don't enjoy it, but you still feel like it's a magnet and you have to do it? Right. And I spend a lot of time, like every once in a while, and even in things that I write online, I spend a lot of time talking about calling and vocation and the things that we feel pulled to, and we feel like it's our purpose. And I can't get away from music as a force for change, and music as a way to lift up people. And pull them out of stuckness. I think about music like wholeheartedly as music therapy, like as a way to help people process what they're going through in life, see it through a different lens, maybe filter what they're going through, and understand life. At least that's what music has always been for me when I think about artists that I enjoyed listening to in my younger years. And so I feel like a magnet towards that calling. Like, I feel like when I go places, I want people to be like, yeah, I actually needed that music. It wasn't that I wanted that music. It wasn't that I just wanted a good night or a good evening of live entertainment, but instead that music engaged me, or engaged my spirit, and helped me to see the world differently, or better, or in a way that I wouldn't have seen it otherwise. And I feel that more than anything in 2020 as I do live streams. It's like songs that have been 4, 5, 6 years old all of a sudden are taking on a whole new meaning. And I'll play a song and I'll see people post comments about, like, yeah, that's really what I needed to get through today. And I feel like more of like I have a better understanding of what I'm doing now as an artist. I just wish I could do it in front of live people.
Yes, and getting that message or performing that vocation in a live performance is something different than just putting your recorded music out to the world.
Yeah, for sure. I forget about people listening to my albums and, listening to stuff on Spotify or iTunes. I tend to not think that way because, for as long as I've been playing and performing, it's all about the next show and booking 3 to 5 months out, and so this year is very different in that way because, people are spending more time listening, not just in live streams, but in ordering music and just finding ways to support artists. And so for me, it's like, gosh, now I ascribe more worth to all these other ways that people are staying tuned into what I'm doing and staying connected to the music and the message. And so, yeah.
This kind of leads right into the next question I had here, that when you're performing your shows, it's either maybe solo or maybe you and your sister or a couple other people, but when you're in the studio, you have a number of musicians with you, right? Mm-hmm. So when you are writing the song, are you thinking about performing it live as a solo act or maybe as a duo, or are you thinking about the studio creation of that song? Or I guess what I'm asking is, what is the essence of, how do you think of the essence of that song? Can it be multiple things at once?
Yeah, I think it can be multiple things at once, but I primarily I'm thinking, okay, how can I make this song translate well solo? Okay. And if it doesn't hold water solo, then I don't want to be hiding behind other instruments in order for it to work. And I go back and forth between enjoying a solo performance and enjoying a band performance, or just duo with my sister. Or figuring out which one I enjoy more, but I want to make sure that the song can have its personality by itself before I bring other instruments into the mix.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a couple of your songs, if we can. I'm going to start with the newest one first. You released a song called All the Time in the World recently.
Yeah.
Right? I want to say a couple of things about this one. First of all, this is a quarantine song, right? You recorded this during quarantine. Did you find that you were connecting with people more during this time? Is that kind of where this idea came from?
Yeah, I wrote the song 2 weeks into quarantine, so it was so new, and that's when quarantine was still fun. Right. I think everybody was like, awesome, I don't have to go to work.
Right, let's chat on the phone.
I also think it's probably why it ended up being somewhat of a, cheesy pop song, super kid-friendly-ish and stuff. But
you have the phone conversations edited in there, right?
yeah. But yeah, that was my reality. I was just like, oh, let me hit up this person and just be like, what's new with you? And two, it's like even people that I always talk to, the conversations instead of being 20 or 30 minutes were like 2 or 3 hours instead. So all of a sudden the world went into slow motion, and it was like, wow, I forgot that relationships matter more than my productivity. And so that song was in some ways just like this fun reminder to, say hi to people.
Yeah. Well, my Monday feels like a Sunday. I'm gonna talk to you. And even if we're not in the same place, I'm gonna talk to you. I can't do my life in the same way. I'm gonna talk to you. I got all the time in the world to talk to you. Well, my Monday feels like a Friday. I'm gonna talk to you. And even though it feels like we're in hiding, I'm gonna talk to you. Oh, I know this ain't exciting. I'm gonna talk to you. Oh,
Hey,
I got all the time in the world
what's up?
to talk to you. I got all the time in the world to talk to you.
Yo,
I know.
that's good, brother.
One more thing about that song. I must confess, I am a very, very amateur songwriter, and I have tried a few times in the last few years to write a song with that title, and it never seemed to want to come together. So I just want to thank you for doing this one so well. Taking the pressure off me. I can now put this to bed.
Someone wrote it for you.
The song needed to get out there. That was the one. It wasn't the one I was writing. So,
That's funny.
so thanks.
My pleasure.
Let's talk about the song Hold On. I hear this as a song of hope and encouragement. It has the "You Are Not Your Fear" is a prominent lyric, right?
Yeah.
Also, the title of the album is from this song, "Bigger Than Your Box." Can you talk about this song a bit?
Yeah, for sure. This song is so important to me, and it was in writing this song that I was able to finish the album or really start the album. A few songs had already been written for it, but once I wrote "Hold On," like all of the pieces came together, and I realized how everything would tie together. I wrote this for a family member of mine and 3 friends who were either themselves going through difficult health situations or had someone in their family that was dealing with something. And so I kind of just wanted to write an anthem and something that would help these people specifically, and just anyone who's listening to the song have courage and have hope at the end of the day, and remember that the things that we're most afraid of, the things that scare us, are not our identity and are not who we need to be. I was living with this particular family member at the time, and they were just dealing with a lot of depression and hopelessness, and every time you entered the house, you just kind of felt it hovering like a cloud. And there's a reality, like when you're going through something that you don't understand and you have to kind of reshape your life around it, you don't, like, it's hard to see a window out, and so this is the only song I've played in every live stream I've done since March of this year. But as I sing this song, the song has a whole new life to it, and I feel like it's hard to hope for a better future when the signs aren't pointing in that way, and it's easy to give up and to succumb to fear. And so as I share this song now, that's my charge to everyone as I sing it. I'm just like, man, like, you might not have a window out. You might actually just have a crack in the wall, and you have to kind of chip away at that crack and fight for that light to come in,
Right.
And fight for your hope. It's easy when you're not. It's easy just to give up when you're not fighting, but you kind of have to fight in order to wake up every morning and feel like the day is worth living and worth doing. And if I'm being honest, I think, like, I've had it pretty good this year because I'm an introvert, because I could hunker down for months and be completely okay, But there are people who are different, close friends of mine who don't necessarily thrive off of being on their own, and I have family living down the street from me. So it's like there is that small, tight-knit community that I have in my neighborhood, but some people don't. And so people are coming from all different places in this pandemic, and some people have lost someone to it. So sometimes I'm just like, oh, well, this is easy for me to say, but it might not be easy for someone to hear. So what does it look like to be on the hearing end of something, and what does it look like to be on the receiving end and actually believe the words that you're hearing? And so I don't know. I think people receive the song in different ways, but at the end of the day, I just want people to know that, without hope, that's it,
Right.
Might as well throw your hands up and call it, and so you got to fight for it. You just have to.
This kind of goes to what you were saying about music. You're kind of discovering for you that music is a vocation, and maybe these are the messages that you feel you need to bring to people.
Yeah, I feel like I have to. Like it's like I have no choice, and I don't do it out of obligation. But it's just a huge part of me. And I'll have people sometimes, close friends who will just be like, okay, you can stop now. Like, you could actually just grieve with me and mourn with me in this thing instead of trying to, like, make me feel better and make me see an alternative reality. And so, I think there's a time for mourning and there's a time for grieving and all that. But I just have this thing that compels me to find the window and find the way out. And I think that's how we move forward, no matter what it is we're going through. And so I feel like an urgency to share that. And, truthfully, it's like there's a lot of music out there. And when I started making music, I was just graduated from college, and I remember going to this open mic night in Pittsburgh at the time, and just thinking that like the artists were so talented, like everyone was so good at what they were doing, and I was like, yeah, this is where I need to be, because then I can really learn from the best in my city and figure out what it means to be a singer-songwriter. But I always left feeling like really heavy-hearted and really I don't know, just sad all the time. And the goal of my songwriting is not to make people feel happy, because happiness is fleeting, right? But it's like, if truth doesn't come with beauty and hope, then I think like even in, maybe I'll give a more specific example. Everything with all that's happening with George Floyd right now, like truth. When truth lands, the truth is that it was murder and racism is evil. But we can't stop there. Like, we can't stop with racism is evil and cops aren't doing their job, or all cops aren't doing their job. We have to talk about both sides of it. So whenever you're talking about evil, you have to talk about good and beauty. And you have to talk about the things that redeem evil and bring hope to hopelessness. And so that's just kind of where I found myself landing as an artist, where I can't stop at what's wrong with the world. I kind of have to look at the other side and be like, okay, well, this is how we make what's wrong good. This is how we make it better.
Right.
You put up walls and someone pulls them down. You think for help, but they kick you to the ground. It's not what you want, but your hope is coming. Life takes all you got, but your hope is coming. Oh, it's not what you want, but your hope is coming. Oh, come on, girl, hold on. You will find your soul. Come on, man, stay here. You are not your fear.
Okay, since you've gotten onto this topic, let's go a little further. You recently wrote a lengthy blog post sharing some thoughts and reactions to the current moment, right, in the United States, the Black Lives Matter movement, George Floyd related issues. I tell you, reading it had an impact on me, and I highly recommend to our listeners that they all take the time to read it. I'm going to read a quick quote, if I may. You're talking here about the difference between knowing what is right and living and acting upon those principles. You say, quote, "We care only to the degree that it won't be an inconvenience or mess with our comfort, or even worse, with our narratives. That is our problem." You also talk about, you already hit on this a little bit, referencing some of the writings of Robin DiAngelo, who wrote White Fragility, how racism is a system, right, that it's not individual behavior. So problems are not easily fixed with maybe some well-intentioned acts, right? So I just invite you to talk more about this blog post in any way that you're moved to.
Yeah, there's so many ways to go on that. I really wrestled with that post. It took me several days to write, and several weeks after everything kind of exploded. And the posts on social media were tough to read, and there was a lot of anger, and rightly so. But I had to kind of step back and ask myself, okay, everyone's angry. And anger is good because it, shines a light on, it helps people ask the question, well, why? Why are we angry? Why are people angry? But you kind of have to go a little bit further because if you stay with the anger, then everything you do is kind of motivated from a place of kind of retaliation, and there is righteous anger, but you can't stay there. And when people are angry, it kind of leads to there's kind of like this power dynamic where if you're angry, then there's obviously someone that you're angry at, and now your job is to be angry at them, shame them, make them feel terrible. But that's what anger does, and you stop there. And my sister always says this thing that condemnation paralyzes, but conviction mobilizes. So if you're condemning people and telling them that they've done something wrong, shame on them, and that's where it stops, then nothing ever changes. But when you help people understand the why, which is always the most important thing, when you help people understand why they've done has gotten you to a place of anger, and you allow that anger to be a passing emotion, and maybe even allow yourself to get to a place of grief, where there's almost kind of like I think there's like a humility in grief, because you allow yourself to be vulnerable. Right. And so then you're relating to someone who's probably even wronged you. You're able to relate to them as a human and not treat them in the same way they've treated you. And so when you can get to a place where you're able to mobilize people and help them understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, then real change can actually happen. And so as I was writing that post, I was like, okay, well, there are almost 10,000 people on my mailing list. I have to figure out what my part is in this story, and how I can help my followers understand what is actually going on. Because some of these people have been following me for 5, 10, some even for the whole 15 years now. And so because of however long they've been following me, I've earned their ears. And so I want to use that well. And so if someone's listening to me to what I have to say, I need to choose my words well and make sure that whatever it is I'm explaining to them, I can explain it thoughtfully and help them understand. And nothing good happens unless there's a place of understanding. And so, that was kind of really what drove me to write that post. And I've had so many conversations about it since. But I feel like right now is where and when we need to be talking about moving forward more than 2 months ago. Because 2-3 months ago, everyone was like, well, Black Lives Matter, we need to talk about this. If you're angry, you need to post something, and everything was very performative. And right. The real question is, like, what happens when the news isn't covering it anymore? What happens when it's no longer trendy to say Black Lives Matter? How do you actually navigate your everyday life, living that reality? Whether you support the organization or not, it's the sentiment we're talking about. Right. And so.
If I could follow up just a bit, I think it might be helpful to my listeners to hear, you did offer some specific, I don't want to say advice, but some things to think about for your readers. And here's what you offered to your, let's say, well-intentioned white friends. You said, ask yourselves why we do not have black friends truly in our lives, and strive to address that. Allow ourselves to be uncomfortable in conversations about these issues, and to enter into these conversations without preconceptions. Instead, have a willingness to be challenged.
I guess those were the first things that came to mind, because as I was silently watching social media, I think, everybody wants to talk, but nobody wants to hear. People come to the conversation ready to say what they want to say, but not ready to listen. And sometimes it's like you are hearing, but you're not actually listening. And so I just think that I was noticing that a lot, and sometimes I think we want to talk just to say that we said something without actually stepping back and doing the internal wrestling that's required to actually deal with the problem. Especially in a social media generation where we think that we've made a difference because we've posted something, whether it be about Black Lives Matter or whatever it might be. It could be anything. We kind of live in that, we live with that mindset now that if we posted something that it's going to affect change. And sometimes that starts it, and because conversation can lead to change, just like I believe a song can lead to change. But there's a lot more, it takes much more work and much more courage to step back and not say anything and ask yourself how you feel about something and be ready to face the truth that makes you that doesn't make you the hero, Yep. And I think that we all want to be the hero, and we all think that we're the hero, but we're not. And just like how relationships go, we think that the other person was the wrong one and we're the right one.
Right.
At least if you're me. So,
no, I think that's fairly universal.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, I think like as a country, that's been the huge wake-up call, where certain people thought they were the good guys, they're now realizing, oh, actually, no, I'm not. And I kind of have to come back to, everything comes back to relationship. Everything does. And I had this meeting with this local community organization last week where someone said something, quote unquote inflammatory on Facebook. And it wasn't very nice, but they said it. And now other people in the organization are calling him a racist and calling that he be kicked out of the group. And so there was a group meeting and we were all talking about how to move forward about it. And it was really interesting because there were only two of us, two black people at that meeting. And we were the ones that were like, no, you kicking people out doesn't change anything. We can't consistently exist in a cancel culture where if someone says something we don't like, we get rid of them, because that doesn't change anything. But that's become our norm now in the country, and that it kind of backfires and it kind of does the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do. And it actually kind of creates this culture of fear where people don't know what to say, they don't know what they're allowed to say, they're afraid of making a mistake, and sometimes people say stuff that they shouldn't say, and they might even say it intentionally, but a lot of times people say things because they're ignorant. Maybe they're not even racist, but they're ignorant and they don't know what they don't know. And so the only thing that we can do is continue to be in relationship with people who think differently than we do, because it's by doing that we actually show them a different way.
That's great. I just want to thank you for writing that blog post, first of all, and taking the time to speak about it so thoughtfully here. I think you have some important things to say. I will put a link to it up on our website so people can read it for themselves. I want to get back to the music for a second. I want to talk about the song Ever Stay. This is a wonderful song. I'm really taken with the changing tempos here as a hook. I hear it in a lot of your songs, but it really struck me here, kind of the dynamics in tempo and rhythm between the verses and the chorus. Can you talk about maybe the way this one came together?
Yeah. Wow, this song means, I love the song. I probably shouldn't say that, but...
No, you're supposed to love your songs.
Yeah, the song means so much to me. It opens up bigger than your box, and it's a song from the Psalms, Psalm 23. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And it is yet another song that has become even more important to me now than it was when I wrote it 5 years ago. And I don't know, I'm not sure what it is about tempo changes, but that's just always, it's always been a part of my songwriting process. I think I always pushed back against the equation for writing a perfect song, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus.
Yep.
I've always pushed back against that. It always made me angry. I've had so many songs that didn't have a bridge. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work, but I just wanted to write what came, and I found that rhythm was what helped break songs up for me, even if I wasn't following that pattern, pattern that makes a perfect pop song. So I think because I shared earlier that music doesn't necessarily come easy to me, and there's a lot of things that don't necessarily make sense to me from a music theory standpoint. However, rhythm and dynamics and building and pulling back and pushing and those kinds of things are they've kind of been my tricks for songwriting and how I write, and how I've made music work for me from the writing perspective. And so that song, it needed that, because it's all about talking about the mountaintop moments and then talking about the valleys. And so it's all about talking about the times that are great and the times that really suck. And I spent a lot of time on this trail near my house, especially this year, just taking walks out there. And every time I'm playing this song, I'm just thinking about walking through the woods and, the curves and it's never a straight path. You're always going up and down over tree stumps that are like sticking out of the ground, and across a bridge, over past a waterfall or whatever it is. And so for me, that song is really just about life and making it through, and just going through the motions of life. And so that song, the movement is so important in that song, and the rhythm is so important in that song. And I think if that song existed but without those things, it wouldn't make sense.
Right. Well, it really works so well.
Highest of highs, deepest of depths, down in the valley of shadows of death, nowhere high that you cannot go, no place, no shadow that isn't your home. Still you ever stay by my side, every low, every high, sink or swim, if I die, ever by my side.
This song is an example, I believe, of how your spiritual life inhabits your creative life, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Can you talk about how your faith and your spiritual life are part of your art?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in a very devoutly Christian home, and growing up, I never really understood it. Like, I knew that was what my parents, even coming from Nigerian culture, if you're anything, you're devout. Like, no matter what it is you're doing, you just got to do it. You got to go all the way or just go home. And so, and sometimes I just thought, okay, well, this is cultural, and I live here, and so I need to kind of do this. But it wasn't until probably my 20s that I started really asking questions. That you have to ask questions when you're wrestling with, like, who you are, what it is you believe, what your purpose is in life, and especially around the passing of my brother, which I don't think we talked about, but that was what pushed me into making music full time back in 2008. Okay. And he had passed away after battling cancer for 4 years. And I just asked a lot of questions, and it was just like I grew up reading the Bible and going to church all the time, but it was more out of a routine, and it was just more of like, well, this is what we do, so we do it. And also this idea of church being this thing that you do for 2 hours, one day a week. But I never understood that, a relationship with God is not something you do. And it's a lifestyle, and it's part of who you are. And, when everything else falls away and, your job's missing and things aren't going as expected. In other words, when your life gets 2020 and you don't have all those things that you fall back on for your security, it reminds you what's important. And so,
Right.
And so that's kind of been my journey, especially these past 10 years. And I'm just like, wow, like none of these material things matter except for my relationship with God. And that has always it's always found itself in my songwriting process. And I can't separate, I can't compartmentalize my life. And so my faith shows up in everything I do. And I think that's the way it was always supposed to be.
Okay. Won't You Be My Neighbor?
Mm-hmm.
The Mr. Rogers song. You did a wonderful version of this. The video is an absolute delight. The children in it are so cute, and they seem so happy and excited to be part of this project. Can you talk about how this one came about, what the project and the song maybe mean to you, particularly in terms of like how the sense of community is a part of your musical life in Pittsburgh and now in Philadelphia?
Yeah. Oh, this music, this song and this video definitely have a sweet spot in my heart. Like I started working on this song. I can't even believe it was back in 2018. I was just about to put out Bigger Than Your Box, and WQED, the PBS affiliate in Pittsburgh, had reached out because they were doing this thing called Sweater Sessions and asking artists from Pittsburgh to create their own version of the Mr. Rogers song or write some kind of tribute to Mr. Rogers.
He is a Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he was from
native.
Pittsburgh. He's from
Right.
Pittsburgh. So I started working on a version. I landed on the ukulele just because, I'm always playing the piano, and it just seemed like it would be a fun ukulele song. And it's got to be about kids, and so that's ukuleles and kids. They just kind of make sense. And I was thumbing around the song, but didn't really finish it. And, there's not much to finish. It's such a short song, but didn't really give it much attention because I was so focused on releasing Bigger Than Your Box and touring it. And by the time I came back to it, the communication had fallen off with WQED. And I remembered it in 2019 because the movie was just about to come out. It was right. A few months before the movie release, and I was like, well, if I'm going to release the song, I got to release it now, just so it kind of gets a little bit more momentum with the movie coming out. And so talked to some friends in Pittsburgh. I wanted everything to be done in Pittsburgh. We kind of cast some vision, how can we make this simple, because it's going to involve a lot of kids and that could get complicated, and how can we really give it the spirit of Mr. Rogers. And I just when I talk about him, I always talk about his peaceful presence. Like he always kind of gave off that fatherly, nurturing vibe, and I loved that about him. I wish I'd met him or known him personally. I didn't, but I was like, well, that would be really cool to kind of maybe approach the song from a different perspective, because, well, my name is Joy, and
right.
He brought a lot of joy into people's homes too. So I'm like, well, this rendition is kind of upbeat anyhow, so he covered the whole peace thing, so I'm gonna bring a little bit of fun and like vibrance to this video and this song and the recording, and just make it about kids being kids. And so yeah, the video was it's probably the most fun I've ever had on a video project, and we just literally got kids together and made crafts for about 8 hours or so, got them dancing, and that was really it.
Yeah. Well, I gotta tell you, if joy was the vibe you're going for, you nailed it. It's a great watch, and that's another thing I recommend listeners check out.
Well, it's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Well, I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine?
Okay, I want to ask you one more question before I let you go. I understand that you now have a business offering consulting or coaching service to artists. I want to give you a chance to talk about that if you want, and maybe how folks can find out more about that.
Yeah, early on in the pandemic, it's funny because it was actually the very beginning of March, I launched Cultivators, which is really coaching and consulting and helping artists to basically better understand who they are as artists, from the message to the branding to connecting with their audience. A friend of mine over the winter had been pushing me to do this, and I kept dragging my feet on it, and I've been dragging my feet on it for years. But with my background in publicity, I've always thought about what does it look like to promote what it is that you're making in a way that it doesn't feel commercialized, and in a way that it still maintains its essence and holds on to its personality. Especially as independent artists, when you don't have the funding and you don't have all of the resources that someone who is backed by a label might have. And I think also there's this fine line, and there's this needing to create balance between looking professional but also still looking like you, where you don't come off as too shiny, because you want to be yourself. You don't want to be this version that you want people to think you are, but you want to actually be yourself. And so I had spent about 8 or 9 years writing a blog called Grassrootsy for independent artists, and helping them booking book tours, route tours, build their fan base, networking, all of those things. And so a little bit after that, I began writing for a website called Bandzoogle. And so I kind of always find this branding, publicity, and artist coaching thing showing up in my life over the last, especially the last 10 years or so. So anyhow, I began formalizing everything in March, and then when the pandemic happened, my friend was like, Joy, you have absolutely no excuse at this point. And so I've been meeting with artists pretty regularly. So I do 2 things. One, where I meet with artists one-on-one to help them work through whatever creative project they're working on, even if it's just getting a better idea on how to present it. And then I've also been doing artist group chats every 3 weeks or so. And there's a max of 7 artists on each call. And it's this free group chat where artists can get together. We just get together on Zoom, and we're basically talking about any questions they have. We've talked about everything from how do you now live as an artist in this time, to how do you ask people to support you through Kickstarter and Patreon at a time when it feels weird to be asking anyone for support. Right. And we kind of just cover the gamut. But for me, it's just really fun to hear artists talk about what they're passionate about, and also help them to shape that.
That's great. And people can find out more about this on your website, your music website, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Great. All right, Joy, thanks so much. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate your taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I look forward to taking in one of your shows in person sometime.
I can't wait for that day.
All right. Thanks, Joy.
Okay, bye-bye.
When you do, you're in view. Everybody's looking at you, and you feel so alive. What does it take?